The first thing I noticed when I woke up was the cold, and the hum of the engine, the kind of hum that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. It wasn't the usual rumble of a truck on a quiet highway. No, this hum was different, like it was vibrating through my chest deep down, as if the whole rig was alive. My head was pounding like someone had taken a sledgehammer to it, and my vision was blurry. I blinked, trying to focus, but all I could see at first was the grey blur of the road stretching out in front of me. The windshield wipers flicked rhythmically, but there wasn't any rain to clear away. The world outside was a constant blur of black and grey shadows and flashing streetlights. I looked down. My hands were clenched tightly around the steering wheel. My knuckles were white. There was something odd about how I was holding it, like I was gripping it too tightly, trying to hold on to something that wanted to slip away. That's when it hit me. I had no idea how I got here. Or even where here was. The truck when it was moving. And I was in the driver's seat, but I couldn't remember getting in, let alone starting the damn thing. The first clear thought that flashed through my foggy mind was, where the hell am... I glanced over to the dashboard. The speedometer read 55 km, but I wasn't sure how long it had been like that. There was a low, flickering light next to the fuel gauge, warning me the tank was nearly empty. I wasn't sure when I last checked the fuel level, but it felt like hours, maybe days since I had any kind of grip on my surroundings. I reached for the radio to turn on something, anything to give me some kind of direction or sense of normalcy. The dial just spun, static, and then nothing. Only the soft hiss of dead air. Then a pop. I froze. That wasn't static. That was a voice. You can't stop now. I froze. The words weren't coming from the radio. No, they were coming from somewhere. Behind me. It was deep, almost like a whisper, but with a harsh edge. A voice that didn't belong in this rig, in this truck, in this world. My heart raced. I spun in my seat, my eyes scanning the empty cab. There was no one behind me, but the voice. It felt close. Too close. Like it was coming from the trailer. The back of the truck. The place I hadn't even thought to look until now. What the hell is going on? I tried to speak, but my mouth was dry, too dry. My tongue felt like sandpaper against the roof of my mouth. So I swallowed, trying to shake off the dizziness. I glanced at the rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of the rig's long trailer attached behind me. It was a rusty, beaten-up thing, but that wasn't the part that caught my attention. No. What caught my attention was the feeling I got, the sensation that there was something inside that trailer. Something that wasn't just cargo. Something that wasn't supposed to be in there. The voice sounded again, this time louder. You can't stop now. You won't make it if you stop. I felt my breath catch in my throat. A cold sweat ran down my spine. What the hell was I driving? And why didn't I remember getting in this truck? Where was I going? What was in that trailer? And who or what had just spoken to me? I slammed my foot down on the brake pedal, desperate to bring the rig to a stop. But nothing happened. The brake pedal felt as though it was stuck, unresponsive, as if the brake lines had been cut. I pushed harder, my muscles straining against the wheel, my eyes wide with panic. The truck kept barreling down the road, faster now, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I slammed the brakes again, harder this time. Still, nothing. My heartbeat quickened. You can't stop now. The voice was back, closer this time. It wasn't coming through the radio. It wasn't coming from anywhere else in the cab. It was coming from within the very walls of the truck, a whisper that sent ice running through my veins. I reached for the emergency brake, my hands shaking as I tried to pull it up. But it wouldn't budge. The truck seemed to fight me, resisting as though the brakes themselves had a will of their own. And then it hit me. I wasn't the one in control anymore. Something else was driving this rig. I tried to steady my breath, my mind racing with panic and confusion. The steering wheel jerked beneath my hands as if something or someone was pulling it, pulling me down this road I couldn't get off. The truck was too powerful, too heavy. It moved with a force of its own, like it didn't care what I wanted. I had to do something. I glanced at the side mirror again. The trailer loomed behind me, too silent, too still. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting for me inside, something alive, something that had been there all along. And the voice, it wasn't done yet. You don't have a choice." The words were sharp, cutting through the air like a blade. I was shaking now, my hands trembling so much I could barely keep them on the wheel. The truck was moving faster, the road outside a blur of darkness and flashing lights. The world was swallowing me whole, pulling me deeper into whatever nightmare I had somehow become part of. The voice sounded again, but this time it was different. "I'm in here, waiting." And just like that, everything stopped. The road stretched. Ahead of me, endless. The lights on the dashboard flickered once more, and for a brief moment everything felt wrong. It was like time itself had stopped, but not the truck. The truck kept moving. The truck's cabin was suffocating. The heavy air wrapped itself around me like a damp, clammy blanket, making it harder to breathe with each passing second. I was still, in shock, still trying to piece together what the hell was happening to me. I wiped the sweat from my forehead and took a deep, shaky breath. The dashboard clock showed 3:32 a.m., but it didn't feel right. Time didn't seem to make sense anymore. How long had I been driving? Hours? Minutes? I couldn't tell. The road stretched before me in a black void, endless and indistinguishable, like the highway was just feeding me into some kind of infinite loop. I gripped the wheel tighter, trying to focus on anything other than the unnerving silence that had settled in the cabin. My fingers ached with tension, but there was no escaping the feeling that something was wrong. Something was coming. Something was waiting. I glanced at the rearview mirror again. It was still dark behind me. The trailer, just a looming, cold mass, reflected nothing but emptiness. But the feeling in the pit of my stomach told me otherwise. "You can't stop now." The voice wasn't my own. I almost swerved off the road, heart hammering against my chest. My grip on the wheel tightened so much that my palms started to burn. I whipped my head toward the back of the rig, staring into the rearview mirror once more, trying to catch a glimpse of something, anything. But there was only the hollow darkness of the trailer's interior. The voice was low, almost a whisper, but its words were clear. It had been so distinct, so real. The kind of voice that could only belong to someone or something alive. But I was completely alone in the truck. I hadn't passed another vehicle for miles. I hadn't seen a single soul since I'd started driving. No lights, no people. Just me and this forsaken rig. My mind raced, the adrenaline still coursing through my body. Was I hearing things? Was it exhaustion? I hadn't been sleeping well, the constant pressure of this delivery weighing me down for the last few days. But no, this felt different. This felt wrong. I could hear the sound of my breath, ragged and shallow, as I tried to make sense of it. I thought back to when I first woke up in the driver's seat. The pounding headache, the dizziness, the sheer confusion of finding myself here, driving a truck I didn't remember getting into, a load I couldn't recall picking up. Everything about this was wrong. The voice only confirmed it. I shook my head, hoping to clear my thoughts. Maybe it's just a glitch in my mind. I'm exhausted. I'm overtired, that's all. I kept telling myself that, but it didn't ease. The creeping panic that gnawed at the edges of my mind. It was more than just a passing hallucination. I took a deep breath and pressed my foot harder onto the accelerator. I had to keep moving forward. I couldn't stop. Not now. But then, there. It was again. "You're not alone." The voice was clearer now, and somehow it sounded closer. Like it was just behind me, whispering in my ear. But when I turned to look, there was no one. There wasn't even a shadow moving in the corner of the truck cabin. It was just me, the engine's hum, and that damn feeling that something was there with me. Something I couldn't see. I blinked. My heart thudded in my chest. The sound of my breath was ragged in the quiet cabin. The heat from the truck's engine mixed with the cold air seeping in from the cracked window. It felt like I was suffocating. Was I losing my mind, or was this something else entirely? The road ahead was still just a black ribbon stretching into nothingness. But the closer I got to the next mile marker, the more the weight of my isolation seemed to intensify. "You're not alone." The voice again, but this time it wasn't just words, it was a presence. The sound of it clung to the air, thick and heavy, like I could almost feel it in my skin. It was coming from the trailer. It had to be. I froze, eyes darting toward the side mirror, searching for some sign that I wasn't hallucinating. But the Mirror reflected nothing but the night. The trailer's outline was dark, massive, just a shadow against the faint light of the moon. I had to pull over. I had to see what was inside the trailer. Don't stop. The voice was different now. It was firm, almost commanding. It wasn't a suggestion, it was a warning to not stop. To keep going, I couldn't explain it. I couldn't wrap my mind around it. But I knew one thing for certain, I wasn't going to find answers by staying in the dark. I needed to know what was inside that trailer, whether I liked it or not. The truck jerked again, pulling me out of my thoughts. The brakes failed once more. Just a sudden jolt of the pedal and nothing. My foot slammed down harder, panic rising in my throat. But still, no response. I gritted my teeth and took my foot off the brake, glancing at the dashboard. The lights flickered again. The temperature gauge dropped. The truck's interior temperature was plummeting, the air turning colder by the second. The heat from the engine should have been doing its job, but it felt like the cabin was becoming a freezer. The temperature gauge read 30 degrees. That wasn't possible. The heat was on. I had the dial cranked to full blast, but the chill in the air wasn't from the outside. It felt like it was coming from inside the truck itself. I pulled my jacket tighter around me, trying to ignore the creeping frost that was forming on the windshield. The cold seemed to be seeping in from the back, from the trailer. The feeling of something cold and alive watching me from the dark was unbearable. And then, from the corner of my eye, I saw something moving in the mirror. I whipped my head around so fast that my neck cracked. The rearview mirror reflected nothing but a darkened void. But I sensed it, a shift in the air. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and I felt it. Something was moving in the trailer. Slowly, quietly. The darkness in the rearview mirror seemed to pulse. "You shouldn't have come here." The voice was unmistakable now. It was the same voice I'd heard before, but this time it was more intense. It was almost like a warning, an accusation. I blinked, trying to steady my breath. I couldn't understand what was happening. Was it the cold, was it exhaustion, or was this something far worse? My thoughts were spinning, and the sense of dread was growing stronger with every passing second. I needed answers. With a quick glance in the side mirror, I saw the silhouette of the trailer again. The doors were sealed, but the shadows within seemed to shift, like something was moving inside, pushing against the metal walls. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end again. This wasn't normal. None of this was normal. "You can't stop now." The voice was so loud, so clear that it echoed in my ears. I glanced again at the side mirror, and this time I knew the trailer wasn't just carrying cargo. It was carrying something else. Something that had been waiting for me, something alive, something that didn't want me to stop. And that was when I realized I couldn't trust the truck. I couldn't trust the road. I couldn't trust anything. VB, real nightmare was just beginning. The road ahead stretched like an endless ribbon of darkness, but now there was a flicker of light in the distance. Grayson's Hollow, just a few miles away. A small town, a place where maybe I could finally get some answers. I didn't trust the truck anymore. Not after the brakes failed, not after the voice. But I couldn't ignore the pull toward that town, even if I felt like I was being dragged towards something I couldn't escape. Grayson's Hollow had to be my ticket out, or so I thought. The rig rumbled as it barreled down the highway, and my grip on the wheel tightened, knuckles white from the effort. It was getting harder to focus, to keep my thoughts clear. The road was still twisting and turning, and I couldn't tell how long I had been driving. My vision was becoming blurry again, like I wasn't entirely present in this reality anymore. But the light ahead, Grayson's Hollow, drove me forward. As the truck sped closer, I saw the first signs of life. The town's dim streetlights flickered weakly in the distance, casting long shadows. I could make out faint outlines of buildings, but everything felt strangely still. There were no cars on the road, no movement, just an eerie silence hanging over the town like a heavy fog. I wasn't sure if I should be relieved or more terrified, but I had no choice. I was heading straight into it. The sign welcoming me to Grayson's Hollow seemed out of place, old, faded, with cracked paint that barely clung to the wood. It was like the town hadn't seen new paint in years, maybe decades. The sense of unease gnawed at my stomach as I approached. But there was something else there too, something in the air that told me this place wasn't normal. I was still gripping the wheel when the voice in the trailer sounded again. "You're too late." I froze. The voice was back. It was deeper now, more menacing, like something was laughing beneath the surface. I glanced at the rearview mirror again, but I couldn't see anything in the trailer. The glass was too fogged up, too dirty to make out any shapes, but I felt it. It was there. The truck lurched suddenly, throwing me forward in my seat. The brakes still didn't respond. I slammed my foot down harder on the pedal, desperate to stop, but the truck just kept going. I cursed under my breath, the sound swallowed up by the engine's roar, and then, just as I was about to slam the truck into a building to stop it, it happened. The streetlights flickered again, but this time, they stayed on. But it wasn't the warm yellow glow of a typical town. It was an unnatural, flickering light, almost like a strobe. It was as if the lights themselves were trying to warn me, trying to tell me something. I couldn't slow down. The town was too close now. The road curved sharply, and I turned the wheel instinctively, but it felt like the truck fought me. The wheels screeched, tires burning against the pavement, but the truck didn't slow. Instead, the corner came up too fast. The rig smashed into a street sign, and I braced for impact, expecting the truck to flip or crash into something harder. But it didn't. The truck somehow straightened itself out, its speed unchanged, still tearing down the narrow streets. I didn't understand how it was possible, but there was no time to question it, because there, right in front of me, was the only building in town that looked like it might be open, an old worn-down diner with flickering neon signs that read, "Grayson's." It was too inviting, too comforting, and I hated how much I wanted to stop there. The truck headed straight for it. I tried again to pull the wheel. Nothing. It was like the truck was locked onto a single course, a fixed trajectory that I couldn't change. The diner was coming closer and closer, and I realized with a sickening jolt that I wasn't going to stop. The truck smashed through the front door. The screech of metal tearing, glass shattering, and wood splintering echoed as the truck burst inside, completely destroying the diner's entrance. The sound of the rig's engine shaking the entire building rang in my ears as I slammed my foot on the brake again. But still nothing happened. And then, as the truck finally came to a shuddering halt, I heard something inside the diner, a scraping sound, faint at first but growing louder, the kind of noise you hear when something long and heavy is dragged across the floor. I glanced up at the diner's wrecked interior. It was silent. Too silent. The lights inside flickered, casting strange shadows on the walls. The counter was overturned, plates and coffee mugs scattered across the floor. But there was no sign of life. No sounds of people running, screaming, or even panicking. And then, from behind the counter, I saw something move. It wasn't a person. It was a shape, a long, thin shadow that crept across the floor, dragging itself toward me. My heart was racing again, and that's when I heard it. The voice from the trailer. "You shouldn't have come here." The truck was moving on its own. I kept repeating that to myself, trying to make sense of everything, but each time the words echoed in my head. They made less and less sense. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, my mind racing to make any kind of logical connection. There was no explanation for how I'd ended up driving this truck, with its broken brakes and its unnatural pull, but whatever had started this, it wasn't going to stop until it had its way. The voice from the back, "You can't stop now," kept echoing in my mind over and over, as if it was ingrained in my thoughts. It was a reminder, a warning, a command, and something about it clawed at my sanity like nails on a chalkboard. I wasn't sure where I was going or why I couldn't just pull over and figure this out. Something was stopping me. The road had become an endless stretch of black, the asphalt disappearing into the night, a void that swallowed everything whole. There were no lights, no signs of life. Just me and this damn truck, barreling down a highway that seemed to have no end. I needed a break. I needed to stop. And then, as if by fate or something far worse, the dim glow of a diner's neon sign appeared in the distance. The faint buzz of the neon lights almost felt like a beacon of salvation, like a sign that I could find some semblance of normalcy again. Maybe there'd be someone there who could help me figure out what the hell was going on. I didn't even bother to check my mirrors as I swung the truck into the diner's parking lot. the tires screeching in protest as they scraped against the pavement. The truck jerked again as though it was fighting me, but I slammed the gear shift into park and the engine sputtered to a halt. I took a deep breath, swallowing hard. The cold air was heavy, thick with a sense of something watching, something waiting. But I had to get out of this truck. I needed to breathe. The diner's flickering sign buzzed erratically as I climbed out of the truck, my legs unsteady beneath me. I felt like I was in some kind of dream, no, a nightmare where reality and illusion twisted together. I hesitated at the door, hand on the handle, but something inside me urged me to go in. The door creaked as I pushed it open, stepping into the warmth of the diner. The bell above the door jingled with a hollow sound as I stepped inside. The smell of stale coffee and greasy food hit me immediately. But it wasn't the smell that bothered me. It was the silence. The kind of silence that made your skin crawl. The kind of silence that felt too thick, like something was just a little off, but you couldn't put your finger on it. The diner was empty, save for a figure standing behind the counter. He was tall, unnervingly still, with broad shoulders and a face hidden in shadow. The only light came from a flickering fluorescent bulb above, casting an unnatural pallor over everything in the room. His movements were stiff and deliberate, as if he were frozen in place waiting for something. I took a step toward the counter, my heart pounding harder with each movement. The figure's eyes never left me, but I couldn't make out any details of his face. It was like the shadows swallowed everything in sight, as though he didn't want to be seen. I felt the air shift as I got closer, the weight of his gaze pressing down on me like a physical force. I opened my mouth to speak, but my voice faltered. Excuse me," I began, but the words caught in my throat. The figure didn't answer. He didn't move, didn't speak. He just stared. Something was wrong. Tried again, forcing the words out, my voice shaky. I need help. My truck is broken. I don't know what's happening. Can you help me?" The man's eyes narrowed, and finally his lips parted. His voice was raspy, as though it hadn't been used in years. "You're not supposed to be here." I froze. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, the chills spreading through me. His words weren't just unsettling, they were true. He was right. I wasn't supposed to be here. This place felt wrong, like it had never been meant for people to wander in, like it existed outside the realm of time. Before I could respond, a loud bang echoed from the back of the diner. I whipped around, my heart leaping into my throat. It came from the kitchen area. The metal doors slammed open, the hinges groaning in protest, but there was no one there. The air in the diner grew colder still, an unnatural frost creeping along the edges of the windows. The light flickered once more, casting deep shadows across the floor and the walls, making it seem like the diner was breathing. I took a hesitant step back toward the door, but then the figure behind the counter spoke again, his voice cutting through the tense silence. "It's too late." I turned back to him, my breath catching in my throat. He hadn't moved, his posture hadn't changed, but now there was something wrong in his eyes. Something ancient. Hungry. He leaned forward just a fraction, his eyes boring into mine with a strange intensity. I wanted to scream, but my throat was dry and my feet felt like they were glued to the floor. I was frozen, rooted in place, and I couldn't escape the feeling that I was being drawn into something dark. Something that I couldn't outrun. The kitchen doors banged open again, and then I saw it. The shape behind the counter, the thing, wasn't just a man. Not anymore. The shadows that had cloaked his face seemed to stretch and twist, distorting his features. His outline began to shift, as if it was made of smoke or fog, his arms elongating unnaturally, the hands curling into grotesque claws that scraped against the counter. His face, when it finally emerged from the shadow, was something beyond human, jagged, twisted, half-rotten. It was a mask of decay, a mockery of flesh and bone, and beneath his hollow eyes there was a malevolent intelligence. The same voice I'd heard before echoed in my mind again. "You shouldn't have come here." I stumbled back, horrified, my mind reeling from the sight of this abomination. It took a step forward, but it wasn't a step. It flowed forward, like smoke twisting in the air, its arms outstretched, fingers trembling with a hunger that made my skin crawl. "You can't leave," it whispered. its voice sharp like nails scraping across glass. The door behind me slammed shut, cutting off my escape. Panic surged through me. I had to get out. I had to get away from this thing. The shape behind the counter grinned, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth, each one longer than the next. "It's too late," it repeated. "You're already part of it." I turned and ran, but the diner seemed to stretch on forever. The walls warped and distorted, and with each step I took, the hallway seemed to stretch farther out of reach. The back door, the front door, they weren't there anymore. Only the shape following me. I had to get out. There was no other choice, but no matter how fast I ran, no matter where I went, the shape was always there, waiting. I couldn't breathe. The darkness around me was like a living thing, suffocating, clinging to my skin, creeping into my lungs. Every footstep echoed in my head, each sound distorted by the silence pressing in from all sides. The diner had turned into something else, something unrecognizable. It was no longer a place to seek refuge. It was a cage. The voice, low and rasping, still echoed in my mind. "You shouldn't have come here." I didn't know how long I'd been wandering through this maze of shadows, trying to make sense of the impossible. The flickering lights, the cold, the sense that something or someone was watching me, waiting for me to slip up. I could feel it now, crawling beneath my skin, scratching at my nerves. The truck, my truck. It was still parked out front, but I had no idea how to get back to it. The diner had changed. The walls stretched and bent, as though they were alive, as though the very building itself was twisting, reshaping itself around me. The back room with the meat lockers. I couldn't shake the image of the bodies, the things inside them. The grotesque faces that stared at me with hollow eyes. The way their mouths had whispered to me, telling me I wasn't supposed to be here. I staggered down the narrow hallway of the diner, every corner shrouded in pitch-black darkness. I thought I saw something move in the shadows, but when I turned to look, it was gone. Or maybe it was never there to begin with. Suddenly, there was a low scraping sound, the same sound I'd heard before, but closer this time, much closer. Froze. My breath caught in my throat. It was coming from behind me. I whipped around, heart hammering in my chest, but there was nothing there, just more darkness. I could feel it pressing against me, like hands reaching out from the void, trying to pull me in. I tried to shake it off, tried to keep moving, but my legs felt heavy like they were made of lead. My mind was foggy, clouded with confusion and fear. The scraping stopped, and then I heard something else. A whisper. It was faint at first, a sound barely audible, but it grew louder as I strained to hear it. "You can't run forever." The words slithered through the air, winding around me like a snake, their venom sinking deep into my bones. I spun around again, desperately searching for the source of the voice, but I saw nothing. No one. Just the cold, endless dark. And then the walls moved. I swear to God, the walls shifted like they were breathing, expanding and contracting, closing in on me, pushing me towards something I couldn't see, something I couldn't comprehend. The cold intensified, biting at my skin, numbing my senses. I could feel the air thickening like it was alive and choking me. I staggered forward, panicked now, my mind screaming for a way out. There was no way out. I reached for the door at the end of the hallway. The exit, the way back to the truck. The door was there, but it wouldn't open. I yanked on the handle, but it was stuck, as though something was holding it from the other side. I pounded on it, but the sound only reverberated in the hollow space, making me feel smaller, more helpless. "You can't leave." The voice again. It was right behind me. I spun around, but no one was there. Nothing except the shadows. The darkness wasn't just a void anymore, it was alive. I could feel it pressing against me, encircling me, curling in on itself, like it was forming into something solid. Then I saw it, a shape, a silhouette, forming in the darkness at the far end of the hallway. It was tall, impossibly tall, and it loomed there, barely visible, just a shadow against the black. But it was moving toward me, slow and deliberate. I couldn't breathe. My legs refused to move. The figure stepped into the faint light from the flickering bulb above. It wasn't human. It was monstrous. Its body was twisted and misshapen, the skin stretched taut over its bones, like a grotesque marionette pulled too tight. Its limbs were unnaturally long, the fingers curling into sharp claws that scraped against the floor. And its face, dear God, its face. It was a mask of rot, a grotesque parody of humanity. Its eyes were wide and black, empty voids that seemed to consume the light around them. Its mouth was open, stretched too wide, with jagged teeth gleaming in the dim light. A grotesque grin twisted its features, and its voice, when it spoke, was like 1,000 whispers, all layered over each. Other, you're here because you belong here. The words slithered into my mind, and the air seemed to thicken around me. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't think. The shadows closed in tighter, squeezing the life out of me. My heart was pounding so loud I thought it might burst. I staggered, backward, my mind racing for an escape. The thing was so close now I could smell it, rotting flesh and decay, like a corpse that had been left too long in the sun. The smell was overpowering, filling my lungs, choking me, and then something worse happened. The walls around me, the very walls I had thought were just part of the building, moved. They shifted, sliding away from the shape, revealing more of the room. More figures, more monsters. They were everywhere. They had been hiding in the dark, waiting for me to get close enough. Their eyes gleamed in the dim light, fixed on me. Some were humanoid, twisted and malformed. Others were something worse, something I couldn't even begin to describe. I turned, scrambling toward the door again, my hands shaking, but the walls had closed in too tight. The space was too small now, too tight. The shadows were everywhere, and they were getting closer, wrapping around me, pulling me in. I reached for the door handle again, desperate, my fingers slipping against the cold metal, but it was useless. I was trapped. The figure, the creature, stepped forward, its claws scraping against the floor, each sound like the screech of metal on metal. It raised its hand, and I felt an icy chill crawl up my spine. You'll never leave. You're one of us now. Its hand reached out for me, its claws inches from my face. I could see the hunger in its eyes, the predatory gleam, and in that moment, I realized the truth. I wasn't trapped in a diner. I wasn't even trapped in this world anymore. I was already dead. The air was thick, like it was laced with something toxic. Every breath burned my lungs, each inhale sharper than the last. I tried to move, tried to escape, but my legs felt like lead. The walls were pressing in on me, tighter and tighter, suffocating, like the whole place was alive, wrapping itself around me, consuming me. I turned, scanning the dark, frantic now. The figures, the monsters, were still there, watching me from the corners of the room, their glowing eyes reflecting off the wet floor. They didn't move. Not yet. But I could feel them closing in. The air seemed to vibrate with their hunger. Reached for the door handle again. This time I could feel it, the coldness. Something had changed. It was as if the very fabric of the building had shifted, the space itself bending, warping. The diner, the truck stop, it wasn't just a place. Anymore, it was a trap. And I was its prey, but I wasn't alone in this. No, something else was with me, something older. Something that had been waiting. I let out a strangled gasp as the truth crawled its way into my mind like a slow-moving poison. The things I'd seen, the grotesque, half-rotted bodies in the back of the diner, the unnatural darkness, the creatures moving in the shadows. None of it was random. I hadn't just stumbled into a nightmare. This was planned. I wasn't just a victim of bad luck, I was chosen. I staggered backward, bumping into the wall. My head spun, thoughts racing, trying to make sense of the madness that surrounded me. You can't leave. The voice had returned, rasping, thick with hunger. It came from the shadows, deep and suffocating. But now I knew what it meant. I wasn't just stuck in a horror show. This place was my prison. It was designed for me. I ran a hand through my hair, my thoughts in disarray. But one thing was becoming clear. The truck, the highway, this place, it was all part of a bigger, far more twisted design. I wasn't here by chance. None of it was an accident. The truth came crawling through my veins, twisting my gut into knots. The truck, I remembered now. The memories I had blocked out. The cold sweat, the endless stretches of road, the endless hours of driving. The strange feeling I'd had like I was being watched. The road never ended, and now I realized why. The truck wasn't taking me to a destination. It was leading me here, to this place, to this hellhole. But why? You wanted answers, the voice whispered, as though reading my thoughts. You wanted to know what's really out here on the road. Now you'll see. The shadows were shifting again, and this time they moved. A figure emerged from the darkness. It was small, too small to be human. It crawled toward me on all fours. Its hands splayed out like an animal. Its skin was pale and slick, like it was covered in oil. But what horrified me the most were its eyes. They were empty. Hollow, black holes where eyes should have been. It was grotesque, a thing twisted from something human but not quite right. And it spoke. "We've been waiting for you." I staggered backward, my heart pounding in my chest. This thing, it was one of them. One of the things I'd seen hiding in the shadows. But this one was different. It wasn't just hungry. It was old. I backed away further, pressing myself against the wall. Sweat dripped down my face, stinging my eyes, but I couldn't wipe it away fast enough. I needed to get out. I needed to run. But where? Everywhere I turned, the shadows closed in tighter. The thing crawled closer, its head tilting to the side, observing me with those empty, pitiless eyes. You can't escape it. It's inside you now. I shook my head, but the words sunk in deep, burrowing into my mind. What was inside me? What the hell was this thing talking about? The answer came, slower than I expected, crawling into my consciousness like a disease. I wasn't just here by accident. I was part of it. This road, this place, this nightmare, it was part of a cycle. And I was chosen to be part of that cycle. My truck, the long hours on the road, it wasn't just a job. It wasn't just a life. It was a vessel, a way to draw me in, to lure me here. And the truth of it all was that this diner, this place, wasn't a stop. It was a checkpoint. It was the point where the cycle begins anew. The truck was the vehicle, the road was the path. But the creatures, the things that stalked the shadows, they were the true predators. And I was the next sacrifice. The small creature reached out, its fingers stretching toward me. It moved unnaturally fast, like a broken marionette snapping through the air. I stumbled back, but the shadow behind me twisted, trapping me between it and the wall. I couldn't escape. There was nowhere left to go. "You're the one who brings them all here," the thing whispered. "The road you travel, it's not just for you, it's for them." The truth slammed into me with the weight of a freight train. The road wasn't just a path. It wasn't just some endless highway. It was a conduit. A way to bring them, to draw them from the darkness into the world of the living. Every trip I made, every mile, every hour spent driving, I was feeding them. I was opening the door. And the monsters, those creatures I'd seen, they were born of the road. They were the darkness manifested, twisted remnants of those who had come before me. The ones who had made the same journey, only to be devoured, consumed by whatever force lurked behind the road. "We've always been here," the creature whispered, its voice growing louder, more insistent. "Always." I sank to my knees, overwhelmed by the horror of it all. The realization was too much to bear, and yet there was a strange calm that followed. Like I had known all along but had been too afraid to face the truth. I had been chosen, and once chosen there was no escape. The thing in front of me reached out its hand, its fingers curling toward my face. The shadows around us grew darker, colder, the air thickening with an unbearable presence. "You will bring the others." I closed my eyes. I wanted to scream, but no sound came. The truck, the road, the cycle, it had all led here. And now there was no turning back.